or on computer. Yeah.
I did a lot of Zooms over a couple day period. I had a documentary come out. So all the interviews I did with papers and podcasts and
Yeah.
the media were all like, I did, I think 30 something Zooms in a day. Each one was like 5 to 10 minutes.
Was it annoying to do?
No, it's fun because, you want them to write nice things and there are a lot of reviewers, but you get asked the same questions. By the 20th time, you're trying to think can you answer it a little differently than you did the previous 20 times?
Hopefully I can ask a few questions that are different, because I watched the Zoom reunion, and I watched the roller shoot from a few years ago.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Okay. So to start off, I really don't think you need an introduction. You're pretty much the heart and soul of Roller Jam, but I'm here with Broadway Danny Wolf.
How's it going?
It's going good. I got to skip work to come do this instead.
No, we're in Canada, are you?
Yeah, I'm up in around Ottawa, Canada.
Oh, you're far east and north of me.
So first question I have for you is,
Sure.
where are you from? And can you tell me about your first memories growing up with roller derby?
So I grew up in the Hollywood Hills, so just mere miles from LA. There's a lot of suburbs, and I grew up in what they call Studio City, which is the Hollywood Hills. So just 5 miles, 6 miles above Hollywood Boulevard and the Sunset Strip up in the hills. So I grew up watching, everybody had, their soap operas growing up. Women had General Hospital and The Young and the Restless. My soap operas were wrestling and roller derby. And we had local wrestling here in LA from the Olympic Auditorium. So I would watch that all the time. Even the UHF channel, which had it in Spanish, I would still watch those. Mm-hmm. And I watched the LA T-Birds, who also skated at the Olympic Auditorium in LA. Their games came on Channel 9 Saturday mornings. And it would be the second half of the Saturday night game from the week before. I wasn't allowed to go to the games because the Olympic Auditorium was in a bad part of Los Angeles. My parents wouldn't let me go. But I watched, that was my soap opera. I never missed the T-Birds, and I was a huge fan. And then one weekend, they were going to skate a triple header at the Forum in Inglewood. The Forum is where the LA Kings and the Lakers played. And I used to go to Laker games. So my parents said, well, if you and your friend can get a ride down there, call us after, and we'll pick you up. So I went with my friend Louie, and it was the first time going to see roller derby live. And I was probably 14 years old, 15 years old. And we took 4 buses to get to the Forum. And I came with these little index cards to get autographs after. And it was a triple header with the LA T-Birds, the New York Bombers, and the Chicago Hawks. And I remember walking into the Forum, into the concourse section, where you give your tickets and you walk in, and you can hear the wheels on the Masonite. And I remember when I walked in, and they were warming up, maybe 14,000 fans there at this time. And it was mesmerizing to see them warming up to music and the speed and these people who I'd seen on TV every week. And we took our seats, and the games live it was the greatest thing I ever saw in my life, to watch it live. It's still the greatest live spectator sport there ever is. Mm-hmm. And what makes it so unique is in roller derby, roller games, is that it's one of the only sports where when the event is over, fans are allowed down trackside to get autographs and photos. Mm-hmm. And I went down and I was getting autographs on the program and on my index cards. And there was one red shirt or heel general manager who was there from the Detroit Devils. Her name was Ms. Georgia Haas. She was sort of like the antagonist to the T-Birds, and I just loved her on TV. She was the greatest villain I ever saw in my life. And when it was over, all I wanted to do was meet her and get her autograph. She wasn't trackside. So I said to my friend, well, let's go to the exit where the skaters drive their cars out of the arena. We'll just wait for her and ambush her. Hour goes by. People are leaving. Go 3 hours later. Now it's night. The parking lot is dead empty. We swear she hasn't come out yet. My friend Louis goes, let's get going. She had to have left. We missed her. I said, there's no way she left. We ran out here. There's no, long story short, here comes this white Toyota up the ramp, and it's her. And she left for her own safety because she was so hated and always had threats against her. She had to wait. Everybody was gone. And she got out of the car, and I got an autograph, which I still have on my dresser. Just says Ms. Georgia Haas. I'll be buried with that index card. Jump way ahead. I was lucky to induct her into the Roller Games Hall of Fame. Many years later, I announced lots of games that she was doing when I've been doing the San Francisco Bay Bombers, and I was doing the T-Birds over the last few years in different leagues. And driving with her up to San Francisco from LA, becoming very good friends with her. She had me induct her. She chose me to induct her into the Hall of Fame, which was unbelievable. But she used to do this thing when she would do interviews. She would always poke the interviewer, and it was Jim McInerney. And would say, let me tell you, Buster, it's Ms. Georgia Haas. And she would yell at him. He jumped, 20 years into the future, I'm interviewing her, and she was doing the same thing to me in the same voice, the same manner, and calling me Buster. And I always had a smile on my face. And she'd say, it's really hard to yell at you and do my character when you're always grinning and smiling. And I always say, I can't help it, Georgia. I'm so happy to be yelled at by you. That you were the greatest thing in my childhood, and now you're doing it to me. The same thing you did when I was 14 and 13 and 12 years old watching you on TV. So, I just grew up a big T-Birds fan. And then in my 7th or 9th grade yearbook, when you have a yearbook at the end of school, you'd autograph them, and friends would autograph your yearbooks on the last day of school. And I autographed in 9th grade everything to whoever I was writing to, fellow students and friends, future roller derby announcer in 9th grade in everybody's yearbook. And that's all I ever wanted to do was announce wrestling and roller derby. And I got to announce professional wrestling in Memphis, almost a year out of college, working for a cable sports network. And I would fly from LA to the Mid-South Coliseum Monday nights to do CWA wrestling in Memphis with Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett, and a very young Jeff Jarrett, and Mick Foley, who was Cactus Jack Manson, real young kid. So I started doing wrestling, but I only wanted to really do roller derby, and just, I'm going on and on here, but the T-Birds had ended in the 80s, and then they were bringing back some local roller derby, and I made sure that I was going to be the announcer to the house because there was no TV. And I ended up doing it and getting the job. And I still announce play-by-play in-house roller derby or roller games in LA and San Francisco when there's games. I'm kind of the voice of the San Francisco Bay Bombers. And we haven't done a game in a couple of years because the promoter passed away. And there's no roller derby in LA right now. So really, there is no roller games or roller derby presently anywhere. I don't count the all-girl leagues. That to me is not roller derby as we know it. But it's been amazing. All these people I grew up idolizing, I've been announcing their games and having them come over the rail and hit me. And it's all I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm doing documentaries, and I've produced and directed a lot of reality television. I just really want to do roller derby. And I'm always pitching it to networks, and I'm pitching it again as we speak right now with yet another production company who's eager and excited to get Bank Track Roller Derby on TV. It's a hard sale. It's just a very, very hard sale.
Who were some of your
pardon me?
Sorry. Who were some of your favorite skaters growing up?
Oh my God. With being a T-Bird fan, Ralphie Valadares and Sam the Man Washington and Ronnie Psycho Reigns. In LA, we had roller games. In San Francisco, they had roller derby. They're two separate games completely. Roller derby is the final score is, 24-22. Roller games, the LA T-Birds, the final score is 108 to 100, 108, 107. In roller derby, there's more rules. There's pivot blockers and two jammers against two. But it's tougher to score a point. It's more defensive oriented, where you have to earn your points, and this blocking is very necessary. In roller games like the LA T-Birds, they fly around the track. You would
Mm.
score 16 points in a jam or 12 points in a jam, and you'd have very high scoring. It was very, one was like the NBA and one is like soccer.
Yeah.
But I grew up in LA. We didn't have roller derby. We only had roller games. So all I knew were the T-Birds and the Chicago Hawks and the New York Bombers, the Detroit Devils, and the Texas Outlaws. That's all we had.
Mm.
I didn't know about the Philadelphia Warriors, and I didn't know about leagues back east or the Washington Cats. I didn't even know the Bombers existed. I only knew what we had on TV here. Then later, and knowing the sport and getting to love it so much, knew, oh, there's a whole nother thing going on called roller derby up in San Francisco, and that's a whole different league. And when I got to start announcing roller derby, it was interesting. It was just a much tougher game, not tougher game to announce, but it was the rules are different. And I'm always conscious when I announce games to explain the rules to the fans very clearly, because the one thing you never want to do is have someone come to a sporting event for the first time and not know what's going on.
Yeah.
So one of my keys when I do announcing to the house, I've announced to 100 people, I've announced to 3,000 people, is make sure everybody understands how you score a point and why they're wearing helmets and who can score the points. You're educating them because you don't want them to sit there going, I don't know what's going on.
No.
You want them to understand the game so they keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So, I would like to do roller games on TV again. I would like that just to be, roller jam was a little more like, it was kind of a cross between roller derby and roller games. I like one jammer against one and four blockers. I just think it's just simple. It's easy to understand. A 1 minute jam, that's it. Then an 8 or 9 year old who loves going to these games live. And I love these young kids that come to games. You can't believe they're like, oh my God, what is this? They're flying around the track, hitting each other. They're kicking each other. They're pulling each other's hair. They're flying over the rails into the crowd. Like kids, there's something about seeing the sport live. It's the sound of the wheels on the track. It's the sound of the crowd. And it's the, like, we do Bay Bomber games at Kezar Pavilion. And there's like this smoke in the crowd and kind of this dankiness. It's like addicting. And there's no other sport, not even professional wrestling, when you watch roller games or roller derby live, it just like, it takes you over. You become really addicted to it. It's the sight, the sound, the smells, everything. And then when it's over, you get to go down and meet the people you've been yelling at and get autographs and photos. One thing is everybody must stay trackside when the game's over. All skaters from both teams, and take every photo and sign every autograph. And think no other sport in the world's ever done that. And that's why it's so fan friendly. And the fans make roller derby. I mean, if there's no fans, there's no sport.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so great is it gives back to the fans. And, you can't go to a WWE show and get autographs after the wrestlers ringside. It's never going to happen. Only at roller derby or roller games. And even at roller jam, we had meet and greets after all the time, where we would sign autographs on roller jam t-shirts or whatever it may be, or magazines or, pictures. And I always said it was very important is to never turn a fan away ever, because if there's no fans, you have no game.
Remember when you first heard about roller jam to working for them? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, what happened is I was announcing the T-Birds in LA. We weren't on TV. We would just like do T-Bird games. And I was the trackside announcer. So without being on TV, I was announcing in-house to the crowd, like doing the play-by-play, of the game. And we had a couple skaters, Tom Chosick and Faith Urban. And somehow they knew there was going to be auditions in Florida. This was 1998 or early 99, probably somewhere around then. And besides that, I was producing specials for Fox Television, these busted on the job, caught on tape specials in LA here, and doing the roller derby like weekend nights. And Tom and Faith said, we're going to Florida and they're going to try this new TV show called Roller Jam. You should audition. And I said, oh, I would, of course. And they're like, but it's in Florida. You live in LA. And I'm like, I'll go back and forth. I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's on Venus. So I flew to Orlando, actually Sanford, Florida, and they had a track set up in like a warehouse. and they were doing auditions for skaters and announcers. And I got paired up to do play-by-play. They were doing like mock jams, skaters, so the announcers can like do their calls.
Mhm.
And I didn't know anybody else there, but Ken Resnick I knew from wrestling. And he was there, and I got paired with a guy named Vic the Brick Jacobs. And we did color and play-by-play, and then I did play-by-play, and he did color. And I went back to LA, and I got a call a few weeks later saying, we would like you to be the halftime like table reporter or something.
Mhm.
We have Ken Resnick to do play-by-play, and we have an American Gladiator named Lee Rearman Hawk to do color, but we would love to use you and have your expertise. So we're going to do a halftime segment on Roller Jam, and you're going to be at like the assignment desk. We do our first taping of Roller Jam, and we shot a few games at Universal Studios, and then they made the set and sat me at it to do like a halftime report.
Mhm.
It was a horrible experience. It went so badly. I didn't know what to talk about. The show was new, so what was I talking? It was a fiasco. I needed cue cards. I was taking a lot of time. I was really having a hard time because I'd never done that before. Rolling and tape. It was a mess. And I finally told the executive producers, why do we have this? It's like we're not getting anything out of a halftime report. There's only 4 teams or whatever. I'm not talking about anything. I can't see the game because it hasn't been edited. And they're like, yeah, you're right. This really isn't working. I go, can I just be on the track and be like the interviewer? Like, we're going to do interviews like during the game. Can I do that? And they're like, okay. And thank God I got to do that because I like being on the track. So I'm always like right in the infield, which is awesome. Like I'm right there in the middle of things. And I knew when we started, I would do like a couple interviews, like a halftime, I would interview a skater before the second half and maybe in between periods, you know. We didn't have a lot of storyline then. So I wasn't really pushing conflicts and storylines. Like Debbie Rice and Heather Gunnan was our only storyline in week
Mhm.
one. Like this, they had a personal feud from speed skating that we carried into Roller Jam, but we had nothing else. And what happened is, as the show went, I would do more and more interviews. And then we got to do more soap opera and a little more storylines as we went. Not a lot in season 1 though. So I was really just kind of this track, but I liked doing it. I would fly. Here's how it worked. I would produce my shows in LA, my Fox specials on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. I would fly, Mondays and Tuesdays. I would fly Tuesday night on the red eye to Orlando. Wednesdays, we would do like work practices and rehearsals. So we would block our games. So whatever games we're going to shoot on the weekend, we'd almost block them for the cameras, and the skaters would kind of get to skate their game. Thursdays were like dress rehearsals. Fridays, we would tape 2 shows. Saturdays, I think we taped 4 Roller Jam shows. There was like a 12 o'clock and a 1 o'clock, and then like a 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And then Sundays, we would do like 2 games during the day. And then I'd fly back to LA and then work Monday, Tuesday. And I did this every week.
Wow.
So I was doing Roller Jam. I was in Orlando half the week, in LA at home, a few days of the week. But it was great. And, season 1 did okay. And then we moved our lineup around. Like Ken Resnick was no longer announcing. I knew Rory Marcus for years. Living in LA, we were horse racing fans. We'd go to the racetrack together. Rory was a California Angels announcer, baseball, USC basketball announcer, a reporter on Fox News, and he grew up a huge T-Birds fan. So actually, I got Rory onto Roller Jam, and it just kind of worked in his schedule when we're taping, even though he was always busy. But he loved roller games. And Hawk lived out here because Hawk would fly with me on the red eye a lot. Hawk lived out here in LA too. So like Mark D'Amato and Ray Robles and Patsy Delgado and Vicky McHugh. And there was a core group of LA people that would skate on Roller Jam. D'Amato moved to Florida. He stayed there, I think, all the time. But I think Hawk and I would fly together on the red eye and fly home together. And that was it. But I think I did probably around 600 interviews, I think, on Roller Jam. It was in that number somehow. I think I'm the only one I think that was on every show.
Mm-hmm. Other
But
Sean Corbin.
Oh, yeah. Actually, you're right. Corbin would have been too, because he was reffing all the seasons. And as you know, Kenneth Logue was reffing in season 1.
Mhm.
And I didn't even know him. I just knew when we got to Vegas to start season 2 at the MGM Grand, he was now going to become our commissioner. Jerry Seltzer was our commissioner in season 1. And you know,
Mhm.
Jerry Seltzer, his dad
Yeah.
invented the game in Chicago in the 30s. Jerry never loved roller jam. I don't think he liked the direction it was going,
No.
from what it started as to what it was becoming. He didn't like it, and I don't blame him sometimes, because he was a real, traditionalist. So he's like, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. So we needed a new commissioner, and it was like, well, this pretty amazing actor has been a referee just because he was living in Florida and was friends with Sean Corbin. He was doing it part time. So we made him our commissioner, and I mean, he was great.
Mhm.
He was so good, and such a good guy. And I still see him. He comes to LA about once or twice a year to do pilots. It's like pilot season.
Yeah.
And if you watch TV, you see him pop up in shows and movies. So we do get together when he comes to LA and have dinner, and we just reminisce about Roller Jam and how he was going to become Drusilla Logue the third in season 5, which I'm hoping we still can do one day.
Maybe. Do you ever just sit at home and just watch Kenneth Loeb movies? You're like, I just feel like watching a Kenneth Loeb movie right now. Tom Nowicki,
Which
I think.
which movie?
Like any of his movies. Do you ever like search
Well, oh
on?
yeah. Well, Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
It's the one, and he doesn't watch his own things. He
Really?
never watched Roller Jam when it was on. He doesn't like to watch himself. In the last few years, I'll send him YouTube videos just of him doing what I think is the best Kenneth Logue. And he will watch them now, and he'll comment back to me like how funny that was, or remember how that went, or whatever. Yeah, I catch him on. He was on a TV series last year, I think, called Lodge 49 on A&E or AMC. He works. I mean, he's a working
Yeah.
actor. I think he's great. He's just a great guy, and he always cracked me up. And his job was probably hard, or harder than anyone else's on Roller Jam, because when you're shooting 6 or 8 shows on a weekend, there's a lot of storylines to remember. And thank God he's an actor and can remember everything in his mind, because, well, we always had to be careful not to watch Roller Jam when it was on and tape at the same time, because it got confusing. Because you'd watch something you did weeks ago, and then the next day you're going to shoot all new storylines. So sometimes it gets confusing, like, because there's so much going on as far as story. And I would always carry cards when I would do my interviews with my questions. Even I would go over the questions with the skaters in the day or two before. I would say, like, all right, Denise, in our second game, you're skating against the hot dice. We got to build the feud with you and Lindsay. I'm going to ask you this question at the end of the first period. And she's like, well, what are you going to ask me? What's going to be a question like this? And we kind of would go over it. So no, I would never rarely do an interview with a skater that they didn't know I was doing the interview beforehand. And usually in the day or two before, I would tell them what the question was. And kind of go over it with them. Like, this is kind of how you have to answer to move this feud forward, or to move this storyline forward. And then during the game, there'd be so much adrenaline going, and I'd pull Sean Ack, and I go, Sean, remember, we're going to do that interview now in between periods. He's like, what are you going to ask me again? And this happened a lot. I go, remember, I'm going to ask you about this. I'm going to ask you this. You got to answer like this. You got to talk about this. Okay, I got it. I remember. And then we go. So, but I would always carry cards if you watch me in the interviews, and the cards always had the questions, because there was so much in a weekend you had to know storyline wise. Back to Kenneth Logue, he had to do so much and talk so much and do these speeches and rule and what he's going after sex and violence and all the storylines. He never flubbed any. Like, it was amazing how only one time of every interview I ever did with him, he forgot what he was going to say. And I think it aired where I asked him a question and he just says, I've gone up. And an actor saying I've gone up means I forgot my lines.
Oh, shit.
And I didn't know what that meant. And he said under his breath, he goes, Broadway, I've gone up. And I just played off of it going, oh my God, for the first time ever, Kenneth Logue has nothing to say. He's speechless. He has nothing to, and that was it. And then he was really mad at himself. after and said, I've never forgotten my lines, or there was so much in my head I needed to know for the whole weekend. I forgot where we were at and what you had asked me. So he just forgot his, answers. And he was really mad at himself, like for days, like that, because he'd never done that before. And
Actor.
yeah, but I dream to interview him again one day, and any league that comes together or goes on TV, which will make happen one of these days, I absolutely want to bring him on as commissioner.
Who's your favorite people to interview?
I like to be, this is a bad answer, but I always enjoyed everyone because everybody was different. But like Denise Loden was always so well prepared. Anything you ask her, she's going to nail it. Mark D'Amato was always fun because he was unpredictable but always knew how to answer. And him and I were careful to go over our interviews and what he needed to say or get across to push a storyline or a feud. Tim Washington was fun just because he's so big. And if he picked me up or threw me, I always loved that. Kenneth Loeb was great. Always made me laugh. I can't tell you how many times, when we do these interviews, there's 2 cameras. So there's one on both of us and then one just on the person I'm interviewing, and that's for editing. Thank God, because you don't know how many times I would be interviewing him and I'd start laughing, almost to tears. So you'd only see him when you're watching the show on the ISO, that one camera, because the one above us was useless because they got me laughing. I loved interviewing him. Lindsay Francis was always fun to interview. I didn't get to interview a ton of people. It was kind of the same. It was always Denise and Lindsay, and it was always Sean and Mark, and it was always Logue and Richard Brown. I loved interviewing too, because I'd like giving him a hard time because I liked him yelling at me. So I would start that shtick of wishing him good luck. And he yelled one, I don't need your luck, and yelled it in my face. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to say this every time now. Good luck, Richard. And then he would yell at me, I don't need your luck. And Richard was so fun to interview. Actually, I asked the executive producer, James, I said, can I do this thing where like fans are writing in and I can ask the skater, like we have this fan question? I would write the question, just something to put them down, to get them mad. And I remember doing it to Mark D'Amato once. We had a friend out here named Jim Green, mutual friend, who was an ex-skater in the 50s. And I remember I wrote the letter myself, and it was like, Dear Marco, I think you're a terrific skater. It was like compliments. And then it ended, but you're a poor excuse for a skater, really. You're lousy. Sincerely, your best friend, Jim Green. And Mark didn't know that was what I was going to read. And he took the letter and he crumbled up and he stuffed it in my mouth and then punched me. Those are the interviews I love doing. I love anything physical. If Tim picked me up and threw me, I loved it. I would just say, just don't hit me too hard. When I announce games in LA, there's a skater named Sweet Stephanie Garcia. Stephanie would hit me all the time. When I'm calling the game, she'd come up. If I heard you saying something bad about me, and she'd punch me. And I finally had to tell Stephanie, after hitting me so many times, don't punch me in the face when I don't know it's coming. You can do a clothesline or put your forearm here, but you can't sucker punch me, because I don't mind getting hit as long as I know it's coming and you're not really going to like square hit me. So like with Tim Washington, he never really hit me. He would like forearm me or pick me up and kind of throw me. So it's sort of controlled. Where the only time I ever got hurt was when Talisa Miller grabbed the microphone, and she didn't like what I asked her, and she took it and hit me over the head with that cube on the mic. It's got very sharp edges. It would just be like the Roller Jam logo. And when she hit me over the head, that box, the corner of that box hit me here, and blood started coming down my face. And I didn't know it until I tasted it. And that was the only time I ever got hurt. And I wasn't really hurt, but, and the Prophet headbutted me once without telling me. I interviewed him one of the last shows, and I asked him something, and then he leaned in and he headbutted me. And he didn't tell me he was going to do it. I don't mind if we go over what's going to happen beforehand, or you tell me you're going to hit me, because then you kind of brace for it or you get ready. He just headbutted me because he headbutted me. And then after I said, what the are you doing? You're going to do it. Tell me you're going to headbutt me. And he thought it was funny or whatever. But I said, you can't do that. If you're going to headbutt me, tell me you're going to headbutt me. We'll work on it, or I'll say okay or no. But I don't like surprises. But, if D'Amato says I'm going to, ask me something, I'm going to grab you here and push you down, I'm like, fine. Then I know it's coming, but I don't, you can't kind of spring the surprise.
Your role changed from when you started to by the end? Do they put more on your plate behind the scenes, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, the first season or two, I wasn't really involved as much in this writing of the shows. We had kind of producers come in and out. And in season 1, our executive producer left, a couple of our producers left, our writer left. James Ponte came in, a really good guy who lives in Florida and was working on like Nickelodeon shows. Somehow he became our producer and sort of head writer. And he kind of started all the crazy storylines. And then Rory and I and a couple other people then would help write with James and come up with storylines, which is really hard. I think whoever writes, The Young and the Restless and General Hospital, I commend them because it's not easy to write storylines. Because not only are you picking who you're going to do the storylines with, in Roller Gym, it was kind of easy. We knew it was Stacy and Denise and Lindsay, and we had like our kind of top 20 that everything revolved around. But when you start a storyline, like how long should you run the storyline for? 2 weeks of TV, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? What are you going to do in those weeks? And then how do you blow it off? How do you end it where it's not a complete, joke of an ending? And then you move on to another storyline. Some storylines we would plan to go 6 or 7 shows and then only go 1 or 2 because we knew, this is not that good. Some we would make go a little longer. I mean, I don't know if I ever came up with anything myself. James would come up with it, and then we would sort of write. Like, we have the skater from England named Scott Smith. Well, let's make it where he's in love with one of the skaters. All right, how do we want to blow? Well, let's have him propose and want to marry her. So you can stay in the, you kind of come up with so my role, I was always doing just the interviews. And then I was doing more of the writing of the stories as the seasons went. I regret some of them. The thing is, though, when the network, when WWF is doing so well, of course, the people at your network who run the network want you to be similar or as close to them. So a lot of times you're getting your executives that are paying for your series. When they tell you what to do, you don't just say no.
No, it's
so when pardon me?
It's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, that's their foot in the bill. So when they're saying, well, WWE is doing like 8 minutes of wrestling in an hour show and a ton of interviews and skits and sketches and who knows what else, do more of that. So we were kind of told, do more story, do more soap opera, which is, you watch Roller Jam, you saw everything was kind of going away from the skating. And because skating was secondary, who was winning and losing games was thirdary, but it was like, who was being kidnapped this week, who's baby, who's illegally in the country, who's half brothers, it was all becoming like shtick. We went way over the top by the end. I mean, there's no question about it. We were just doing too much of it. It was too silly. Some of it was too stupid and ridiculous. And we had so many great skaters at this time that we should have concentrated more on the wins and losses and the action and the speed and the aggression on the track, and less about, the profit and canine and disable and, kidnapping and all the helicopters, because it's at a point you just go, now it's just getting stupid. It's getting silly. And by the end, we were really silly.
I'll admit, I do like some of the crazy storyline, but it was just the 3 jams, a period that I mainly had the problem with. Of course, it's with time. You're doing a storyline, you only have 45 minutes to do an episode. But I did enjoy some of the crazy storyline. I will admit that.
What happens with TV is when we started, when you do roller derby on TV, it's made for television. So it's very easy to like format it where like you have your opening, your intro, Rory says hi everybody, you introduce the skaters, I do an interview, you do the first period, you go to commercial, you come back, you do period 2, then you have commercial, halftime, then you have a commercial, then you do an interview, then you have the third period, then you have fourth. It fits like perfectly into a television format. And then you have your goodbye and you're right at 45 minutes with commercials, an hour. So when you have a running clock, it's very hard because when a jam, if you're supposed to, let's say, have 4 jams in a period and you have a running clock, and let's say after the jam a fight breaks out or one of the skaters gets hurt and the clock's still running, you may only get 2 or 3 jams in your period when you're supposed to have 4. And that changes your whole game because you're setting the plays. When you just say we're going to do 3 jams or 4 jams, 1 minute per period, you go, all right, these are the 4 jams. We know we're going to get them in because the clock stops and we do the next one. And the clock, like it's so formulaic. You get in everything you kind of script out. But if the clock keeps running and you have something that happens after, let's say, jam 2, and Sean's over here and D'Amato's over there and Tim's over here, and the refs are going, come on, we have to do 2 more jams. Now all of a sudden you have 45 seconds left and you only have a time for 1 jam. It changes you can't control it. You have to keep everything controlled. And when you have a running clock, you lose control of your game.
Did you guys know in the first training camp who was going to become stars? Was there some people that surprised you that became stars later?
We always knew when we started, like Debbie Rice, Denise Loden, Heather Gunnan were the 3 sort of main girls, and the guys were Mark D'Amato, Sean, and Tim Washington. I would say those 6 were the automatics. Then you had maybe just right below them was like Janet Abraham and maybe Rusty Montgomery. I think we only had 4 teams then. Richard Brown. Then we had Kim Hart and Laura Weintraub. Shea Brown, I don't think was that big at the beginning. There was a girl named Shelley Rousseau that was on the Enforcers. No, it was just like a small handful that we knew we were kind of concentrating on. It was really Heather and Debbie and Denise, and I would say Sean, Tim, and D'Amato. And that was like, then Bill Barker might have been just under that, and maybe the Martin brothers they were kind of tiers. You have like your stars, then you have like sort of your jammers, and then you have your blockers. And we had a lot of great skaters that kind of get lost in the pack because they kind of just become pack skaters. So they were never really focused on too much. You'd hear their names for blocking, but we never really built story around them. They were really just pack skaters, they call them. But we had great jammers. We didn't always do great storylines. Christian Salvia, great jammer. Siggy Williams, great jammer. We had a lot of Brian Krebs, Eric Slopey, then Mo, of course. Jason and Mark kind of took, I think, a little bit of time for them to sort of become what they became. But I think we had I forget what you call them, like the top 20 that we kind of concentrated on. And those were the people you always saw the storylines built around. It was very rare we would take someone who wasn't, in our like kind of top 20 and then start building them up. But yeah, I mean, being really good during interviews also is key to that. Not everyone. Stacy Blitch was another one we started. I take that back. Stacy, when we started, and the Bod Squad, we knew that was a big thing. But not everyone, is great on the mic. And if someone is not that good, and same as wrestling, you don't really push them too much.
No.
But yeah, it's always a work in progress. I mean, because it's a soap opera.
Yeah.
And it's funny how wins and losses were never supposed to mean much. They never have in roller derby. That's why there's no standings. it's you have so few teams. When you're going to have a championship, you might as well just kind of do a tournament, and the cream kind of always rises to the top. That's why I don't know if the Sundogs ever won anything. When we started, the Sundogs were the team we was like our white shirt, our face team, and the Enforcers were the heel team, obviously. But it's very funny as we went on, everyone hated the Sundogs. The fans hated the Sundogs. People on our live tapings hated the Sundogs. Skaters didn't want to skate on the Sundogs.
I think it's
That's
the
why.
outfits.
Pardon me?
The outfits, the yellow and orange. I'm like, I wouldn't want to put that on either.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember, I think Janet started on that team. She went to the Enforcers. Denise Loden started there. She ended up, I think, on the Riot. Lindsay Francis, I think, was on the Sun. Bill Barker. It's kind of became, they were almost too good to be on this team. And everybody loved the Enforcers the most. But it's like the Stone Cold Steve Austin phase, you know. You come in as a heel, you want everyone to hate you. The more ruthless and mean and the more you break the rules, the more the fans love you. So at our tapings, everybody loved the Enforcers. And people loved the Riot in time. And I would say then if you went down, I mean, the Sundogs and the Rustlers were sort of at the bottom. And then maybe the Hot Dice were sort of the neutral to good team. And the Quakes were kind of, I would always say it was sort of the Enforcers and Riot, and then it was sort of the Quakes and Hot Dice, and then at the bottom were the Rustlers and Sundogs.
The Riot, when they got Denise and Debbie Rice, they became cool.
Yeah, they were cool, and Amy Craig was on. I mean, they were a good team, and Laura Weintraub, who started on, I believe, the Hot Dice. No, I like doing Riot games. It's funny when you're doing like 8 tapings in a weekend. You go, all right, so which games are we doing? And I shouldn't say this because it's unfair because all the games are great. But if you go like, oh, it's a Rustler Sundogs game, you go, all right. And then you go, our next game is the Riot against the Enforcers. You know, there's more story and more heat and more conflict that's going to happen because of who's participating. So I was always jazzed when it was like some of those teams. It was harder to get up for like a Sundog Rustler game as it being in the infield, as opposed to when you had the Riot and Hot Dice or the Quakes and Enforcers. You know, you had more heat on those games.
Who do we blame? Who's the guy that we blame for screwing up Roller Jam? Because they should be on still, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, yeah, I as like wrestling, you never think it's going to go off the air. We never thought it would go off the air or end. I mean, the story's always been, you know, we were on TNN and we were fine on TNN, even though Friday nights was the wrong night to be on. It's a really stupid night to be on because most kids are out at either football games or they're out at movies. They're out doing things. That's why you don't see WWE for years. Was never like it was Monday Night Raw or Monday Night Nitro. People are home. So, and I don't know if it was season 2 or 3. I know Vince McMahon at one time was interested in Roller Jam. In buying it, taking it over, ending it, whatever he was going to do, I don't know, but there was interest. The 2 men that ran Roller Jam were Ross Bagwell and Stephen Land. They were from Knoxville. They didn't care about Vince. It's like, we have our show here on Friday nights on TNN. You have your wrestling on US. Like, leave us alone. Like, we have our thing. You do your thing. And they were never interested in selling Roller Jam to anybody. Like because it was doing well and we anticipated it to get to the WWF level at some point or time. So I remember and then never hearing about it again. In season 4, then we kept hearing that Vince McMahon was going to leave USA Network. His contract was up and was looking for a new home for Raw. And then the rumor started coming out that he was going to come on to TNN, that Monday Night Raw was going to come to TNN, WWF was going to come to TNN. And we were like, oh my God, I hope this happens. Oh, this has got to happen. How great is this going to be for us? Like, we can be on before Monday Night Raw, like at whatever, 7 o'clock, and then Raw comes on at 8, or we'll come on right after. Like, we thought we would be a lead in or a lead out or be a companion. Then we would go this, like, really elevate ourselves. So we're like praying it's going to happen. I remember going, oh, I hope McMahon comes to our network. The day he signed, I'll never forget this. I was in my office here in Studio City doing some show for Fox, and we were planning season 5. We just started talking about season 5. And I remember getting the call from James saying, well, McMahon signed the deal to come on TNN. I'm like, great. He goes, no, we're canceled. I'm like, what do you mean we're canceled? He goes, we're there's no season 5. We're done. And I'm like, holy shit, that's it? Like, no tour, no storyline. We're like, it's it. And I'm like, maybe Ross and Steven will pitch the show now, Roller Jam, to USA. Like, maybe now we can take their place and go to USA Network. The problem with Steven and Ross is they're TV producers. Roller Jam was a television show. So they've had shows canceled in the past. McMahon, like, wrestling's his life. So he's going to keep it going no matter what. Steven and Ross, and I love them, they're great guys, but it was like a canceled TV show. I don't know how interested they were in pitching it anywhere else. I think it was just like, oh, we got canceled. Well, we'll just keep doing Forensic Files and the other TV shows their companies were doing. And they didn't have, like, Roller Jam wasn't their life. They had other TV shows and other things going on. So they never really actively took it anywhere. They didn't try to pitch it to any other network. Well, now you jump forward, we're canceled, we're done, we're all kind of sad, and I'm pissed off. And then McMahon, ends up back at USA Network. So the moral to the story is that if McMahon would have just stayed on USA the whole time and never left, jumped to TNN and went back to USA, if he would have been at USA the whole time, I don't know if we would have kept going for how long. Our ratings weren't that great towards the end for how much the network was paying. So even though we had M&M bars and we had advertisers, Roller Jam was very expensive. There's a lot of skaters. There's a lot of money going out. There's a lot of camera and editing, and it was not a cheap show to produce. I don't know definitively if we would have kept going forever, if our ratings kept sliding, the network would have eventually said, I don't know if this show's worth the money we're putting into it for getting like a 1.5 or a 1 rating. Because our ratings weren't that great at the end. They slid. And it might have been, maybe we would have gotten 1 more season, and then TNN would have said, you know what, this is not cost prohibitive for us anymore. I don't know that. That's just speculation. Maybe we would have done 3 or 4 or 5 more seasons. Maybe we would have switched to another network and gone to TBS or TNT or who knows where. We'll never know the answer to that, but it's just weird that since 2001, there's been no roller sports of any way, shape, or form on TV. I've come close maybe a couple times with some networks. Now that nostalgia is sort of in on television, I mean, that's why you see Press Your Luck and Match Game and certain old shows coming back. Now is a great time for some roller sports show to come back. The fight is 2-pronged. It's the executives you pitch at networks don't have an appreciation for it or don't know what it is because they're young. So they're like, I don't even know what Roller Jam is. Next. And then you go, well, it's going to be like wrestling. Everyone who watches wrestling is going to watch it. So you already have a built-in audience. So you're taking something new and you already have a ton of fans in the world that are going to watch. But it's a hard sell to someone young that doesn't understand what the sport is. So I have a deal memo actually sitting in my inbox right now for something called Roller Sports to start another new league with a big production company, and they're tied in with Warner Brothers Television. So I haven't signed it yet, but we're talking. But I've done these deals with production companies that do major TV series, and I sign the deal, and it's like a year option, and they get very excited at first, like this is going to be great, and and then as kind of weeks and months go, and they're not getting any kind of love from networks, they just forget about it. And the production companies go on and do their shows for other networks. And I'm sitting there tied into a deal with a production company. Now I can't pitch roller derby to anybody because I have a deal signed for a year option with the company. So actually I have right now as we speak, and last week I got a 1-year option deal with a television production company called Roller Sports. And I've talked to them about it and wanting to do this again, like roller jam. But then you also face well, what are we going to do that's going to make it different? How are we going to make it 2020? How are we going to update it? Roller jam got sold because it had inlines. So we kind of took traditional roller derby and kind of kicked it into the 21st century. Now they're on inlines, and it was kind of, you saw the uniforms, and we had hot, young, great speed skaters. So I had a call last week with these producers and like, well, what are we going to do to make it different? And one of them said, how about a figure-8 track?
Yeah.
And I said, well, they tried that in rock and roller games, and it doesn't, like, gimmicks for just making a gimmick don't sell it. And he said, well, we can have all the action at like center stage. So when they hit the cross, everything will happen. I'm like, well, it's not how it works.
No.
Now there's these roller skates that have like wheels that light up. They were talking about these wheels that light up. Then I said, well, why don't we just have motorcycles on the track, or like scooters, like rollerball? Make the track wider, and then each team can have someone on a motorbike, because rollerball is my favorite movie of all time.
I like the original.
Oh,
the original is good.
The one with Chris Klein is unwatchable. Here, one sec, I'll show you this. One off for a second, then I will show you. Now, can you see? Can you see that?
Yep. I love that movie. Yep. That's
on my wall. And it's actually autographed by Maud Adams, who was in the movie.
Okay, cool.
In the bottom. So that is one of my prized possessions, because it is my favorite movie of all time. So yeah, the question, Eric, is how, do you have to update the show, or can you just turn the clock back and make it nostalgic and just have a bank track, 5 teams, and just have it, the emphasis be on the skating with some great characters? And I don't know. I'll know that soon. But I don't like pitching a new roller derby or a new roller jam or a new roller game show and just throwing in new gimmicks because it's the sake of throwing in gimmicks. It cheapens it, but it's like, fans know. Like when Rock and Roller Games came on and they had an alligator pit and a wall of death, it's like, it's stupid. And that show lasted 13 episodes. That was it. It's sometimes you can't just put in new shit just because you think you're supposed to.
When I watch
you're not making the game any better.
When I watch roller games, I'm watching it because I want to see Richard Brown, I want to see Ray Robles, I want to see Patsy Delgado. So I first watched roller derby as roller jam. So when it was done, I looked at other places where I could watch roller derby, and with roller jam or roller games, I watched it because I want to watch the roller jammers more than anything.
But that show, I mean, even though there were great skaters, then it was too much with the gimmicks and the rock bands and again the alligator pits and the jump and the wall. Like, wrestling doesn't do that. I mean, they did try it. I think it was the wrestling group that had the octagon shape. What was the one that they shot in the same sound? Impact. Yeah, they had what happened to that? You don't have to change shit just because you think you have to. There's nothing wrong with the bank track and teams and having the speed and the athleticism and the rough and the tough and the good characters and the bigger than life. Like, that's good enough. Like,
I agree.
It's just, but this is a battle I will fight always, and I'll probably be fighting it tomorrow on the phone. That we don't need gimmicks. But then they start thinking, well, no one's just going to buy that shit that was on in the 70s. And it's like,
they will.
Yeah, they actually could and will.
Fans want that.
The fans want that. Exactly. And it's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. Roller derby and wrestling kind of have always gone since the invention. Roller derby is the first sport was ever on television. The first televised sport was roller derby in the 50s. Wrestling and roller derby always went like this. One had a peak, the other was here, and then wrestling. For the last 25 years, wrestling's here, roller derby's barely here. Like, and they're sister sports. They go hand in hand. The fans of one are usually the fans of the other. But there's been now this imbalance for decades where wrestling kept going and going and going and going, and roller derby just kind of, after Roller Jam in 2001 or so, that was it. The sport died. The all girl leagues don't count, and I don't count that. So to be honest, there's a reason why that's never gone on TV. It's so un-TV friendly. So I would just be happy to bring like the LA T-Birds back and do roller games on television again and give it a nostalgic look. I'd be totally happy. To bring Roller Jam back, I'd be totally happy. But it seems like every producer wants to create their new, the new spin.
Mm.
And that kind of makes the pitch even harder, not easier.
When Roller Jam ended, I had to go back to wrestling to get the same fix that, I
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
watched wrestling, but during Roller Jam, I always said I'm a Roller Jam fan, and then after I was like, all right, I have to go back to wrestling now.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, yeah, I grew up a huge wrestling fan, and I used to drive, when I was in college, I would drive the WWF wrestlers from the sports arena in LA to the hotel. So I had Jake the Snake Roberts in my car. I had King Kong Bundy in my car. I had Tito Santana. I had Kamala. I had all the great Bobby Heenan. I had Jimmy Hart. All these guys I knew and would hang out with because I was just a big wrestling fan and a big roller derby. I still am. I don't watch wrestling as much as I used to because it's just too much. I went to every WWF show in LA for I don't know how many years in a row in the 80s when it was great. I was at one of the WrestleMania, like WrestleMania 2 I was at. And but I haven't followed wrestling probably in about 10 years. So I don't watch All Elite. I know about it. And I know about, Jeff Jarrett's a friend of mine. I know he started a group a few years back. I don't think it's around anymore. And it's actually funny. I forgot this. The people that was what, TNA, right? Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
That was Jeff Jarrett's group, the one that was shooting in Florida. I met with them about a roller derby show. And Jeff Jarrett and I met 2 or 3 times about launching a new roller derby show with those guys. I met with them actually here in LA. Some of the guys from TNA about starting a roller derby league. And then once again, I can't tell you, Eric, how many times I've had meetings since Roller Jam with production companies and people interested in bringing it back. And it just doesn't go anywhere.
The fans appreciate you trying.
As the fan too, that's why I do it for the fans, but I do it just for the love of the game. I mean, I'd be so happy to bring it back just for the fans and for young people that don't know how great a sport it is and how cool it is and how much better it is than wrestling on TV. It's a better sport than it live. You can't compare roller derby and wrestling. Roller derby is the greatest live spectators because something's happening all the time. So even when a play is over, there's like a fight. And when the fight's over, there's a jam, like this, the action almost never stops except for between periods. And there's sometimes fighting and shit's going on between periods. And then you have halftime so the fans can kind of get something to eat or drink and kind of unwind. And then it kicks back up. There's no sport as exciting live as anything bank track. I'm telling you. And I've had friends come to roller derby games in LA and San Francisco that have never gone, and they get so addicted. And I turn around while I'm announcing, and they're yelling, they're screaming, and after they're getting autographs, and they would always say, "Oh my God, we didn't realize how fun it is live." I mean, you get your aggression out, and you're seeing these people hitting each other and flying off the track over the rails. There's no sport in the world like live bank track action. Nothing even close.
I've only seen it like the girls skate live. I went to New York and saw it, and it was flat track, so but there was actually like 1,000 to 2,000 people there, and so it made it really exciting to watch. Then I saw it in Ottawa, and it was not fun to watch at all.
Now I was invited to an LA Derby Dolls game. That's not flat track. They skated bank track. But it's so legit that the games are mismatches.
Yeah.
So I'm at this Derby Dolls game in LA, and there was, several hundred people like in a warehouse in downtown LA. And the score at halftime was like 49-8. And I'm like, well, this is over. It's a total mismatch. And we left. We're like, there's no anticipation of who might win or who might lose, or
Mhm.
you already knew who was going to win the game. The rules were confusing and they weren't explained to the fans. So a
Mhm.
couple people I went with are like, why is that person getting a point? And wait, that person just got on the track, but they like nobody knew what was going on. You were just watching people going around and like hitting each other.
Mhm.
And I remember how many people left at halftime. And I'm like, I'll never come back to an all girls game ever again. And not to piss on what they do because, you know, they've done it successfully and why not? You can't put someone down for trying
Mhm.
or, doing what they do. But to me, it's just not roller derby. I don't like that they even use the term roller derby. To me, it makes me cringe. So I don't like that. And if it was so great, it would be on TV on major networks all the time. And it never has been for a reason. It's not, it's confusing. And again, because it's so legit, the teams are like mismatches. Like one team's, I think there was a game I heard in Arizona where the halftime score was 108-3. It's like, what kind of competition is that lopsided where a fan is going to be into it? At least in what we do, we control it. We
Mhm.
keep the games close. We keep the teams even. Like there's always, you never know who's going to win or lose, even the last minute or two. Some people put the sport down like T-Bird games. They would always come back in the last jam to win, but it was always close
Mhm.
and it was always exciting to the last like second of the last jam. So fans are on their feet because they don't know what's going to happen. And what good is it having any competition or sporting event when it's over by 5 minutes in? You already know that team's going to slaughter the other team. It's not like a competition.
I think that roller derby being scripted is much more fun to watch than if it was real.
It's yeah, you control it, but I mean, and not it's just the same thing as wrestling. Yeah, there's things that are scripted, but people are getting hurt. I
Mhm.
can't tell you how many injuries I saw in roller jam. Some of the
Right.
fights are real. When someone leapfrogs someone's head and their head goes up and the person falls back and breaks their collarbone, they're really breaking their collarbone.
Mhm.
Some of the when you're getting elbowed off the track and you fly over the rail, you can't fake where you're landing off the rail onto the cement. So although our games are set, as they say, not really scripted, they use the term
Mhm.
set. The games are set. There's still a ton of
Mhm.
athleticism and speed and hard hits and fights and things break out and stuff happens. So yeah, it might be you know set, but you know what? It's still exciting.
It is. It's like when people say, "Oh, roller jam's fake or wrestling's fake," I always say, "Your reality shows are all fake."
Well,
You know?
yeah, I produced and directed enough of them to tell you it's 100% true.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, Roller Jam is less scripted than the Real Housewives of any city,
Mhm.
and but it's soap opera. I mean,
I don't know
General
the ending.
Hospital's not real. Young and the Restless isn't real, and people like to follow their characters and follow their storylines and follow the drama. No different than Roller Jam.
I run wrestling events in my hometown, but just like once a year we would do a show for like the people of Renfrew. And what I do all the boring stuff, and I have my cousin, he's a wrestler. He does all the dealing with the guys and hiring whoever's gonna wrestle. And I tell him like, don't tell me who wins. I don't want to know. I want to watch it as a fan, you know?
Oh, 100%. When I do trackside announcing in the games, I never want to know either who's going to win the game before or not because it changes how you announce. I don't want to project
Mhm.
anything, so I never know. I never knew in roller gym. Some of the times I didn't know in roller gym. I didn't care. Um, but when I'm doing live announcing of like Bay Bomber or T-Bird games when we do them, I don't know either. I don't want to know. I want to call the game as if everything's fresh and everything's happening on the spot. So you're exactly right. It's when you're involved, it's best not to know if you can avoid knowing.
Mhm.
Plus, in roller
There,
jam, I had enough to worry about with all the interviews.
yeah. So there's unaired episodes of Roller Jam, right? Do you remember
I
anything that happens?
Yeah, no, there. I think there. I want to say six shows. I don't know, four or six.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Well, I know the big angle we did with the mini me's. We brought a little Richard, a little king, and it was a little person, a dwarf named Selwyn Emerson Miller, who was we put in the crown and a suit and a briefcase, and he was the little mini me of Richard Brown. So he was with the riot, and we put him in the penalty cage with the little nasty. So we had a little Tim Washington also called Little Nasty. So I think they were on two shows, but in one of them, the little Richard Brown hits me over the head with the little briefcase, like Richard used to hit me with the big briefcase. And I remember Little Nasty riding on Tim Washington's shoulders on a jam. So there's a jam where Tim Washington's going around, and the Little Nasty is on a piggyback ride, and he's hitting skaters with the helmet. So I don't think the mini me's ever aired.
No.
And then I don't remember if we ever aired the challenges. Like we had the Ann Calvello, had a match race with Kenneth Logue.
That got aired,
And
yeah.
did that air?
It did, yeah. The Demolition Derby was the last episode that I ever saw.
Okay, that was right at the end. We did that in maybe the last weekend. Maybe it was 4 shows that didn't air. I don't remember if it was 6 or 4, but I just remember, and I do have the DVDs. I should post them or send them to you, and you can post them. Maybe I'll do that. I actually sent them they're in New Mexico with an editor who's putting together a sizzle reel for this new roller sport show. So I sent him the last like 10 roller jams on DVD because I have them all on DVD. But when I get them back, I'll send you the last maybe 6 of them. Mm-hmm. And they're on DVDs. And if you want to burn them and put them up on YouTube, then people can see the mini me's.
I would. I'm always concerned, like, who actually owns Roller Jam? Because I'm always concerned that they're going to go after me or take down the channel because I'm just taking them off VHS.
Now, Ross Bagwell owns Roller Jam. Ross Bagwell was one of the executive producers and owners of Roller Jam. Ross had the track in storage up until like a year ago, and I think finally just got rid of it. But he had the scoreboard, the rails, the materials. I think he still has the uniforms and the helmets. He has the scoreboard, he told me. And I made a deal with him about 7 or 8 months ago where I signed on to own half of the Roller Jam library. And I tried to get it on Fox Sports because when they were airing rock and roller games, it's because Fox Sports didn't have a lot of sports to run because of COVID. So they were trying to fill hours of like empty hour. They didn't have new sports to put on. So I made a deal with Ross to take half. I own half of Roller Jam, and now Ross owns half of the library. And I tried to give it to Fox Sports. Like, we never even talked money. I was just going to give them 160 episodes and say, can you put this on Fox Sports? And they said, no, we don't really need it right now. Sports are starting to come back and college basketball is beginning. I could still try. I've been thinking the last few days of getting a hold of Fox Sports again, saying, hey, do you any interest in airing these? But they don't need to fill as many empty hours now because sports are kind of coming back and have been back. But I wouldn't worry about posting games. I don't think Ross is going to ever do anything. I think they like it.
Where do you see the future of roller derby?
I see the future of roller derby hopefully coming back on TV this year, and me running it and being involved and putting the show together and the games together. It will come back again. The future, it's going to come back. It's just when and what will it look like? And who gives a crap what network? I could care less what network as long as it's on a network. So if someone said, do you want to be on, a YouTube channel? I go, if they're paying for it, sure. If they want to air it every week, or USA or TNT or TBS or Netflix or Amazon Prime or Apple TV, doesn't matter. It just has to find a home so people can enjoy it and know how great it is. I think it's going to happen. I just don't know what it's going to look like. I'm very protective. It's like my baby. I'm protective that it doesn't look like some schlocky, gimmicky show that kind of supersedes the skating and the athleticism. And I do everything in my power to make sure it's not gimmicked up. And but I do think it will come back. It's been too long now. And also, there's a lot of people that don't even know what it is. So you'll have 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds that go, "What is this? Oh my God, this is cool." Especially kids that are into video games might really take to it. Then you're going to have the fans that are in their 30s and 40s and maybe late 20s that grew up on Roller Jam. Like, "Oh my God, something's back." Then you're going to have your people in your 50s, 60s, and 70s that go, "Oh my God, that's so nostalgic. We grew up watching roller derby." So, as I tell people, it fits every age group, men and women.
Mhm.
Um, people will watch it for the nostalgia, but young people who don't know what it is and have never seen it, let's say you're 14 years old, you don't even know what roller jam is. They're going to watch this going, "Wow, what's this? Look at them flying around at great speeds, hitting each other and going over the rails and flying." So the audience will be there. I'm not even worried at all about people watching it. It's what it looks like when it comes back.
Have you ever watched the show Friday Night Lights? It's like a
Yeah,
football TV series. Would you ever want
yeah.
to see a roller derby kind of show like that where it's a TV show, but they're roller derby people and they show parts of games? Is
They
that kind of
now they
blasphemy?
now they try the A&E had a show on called Texas Roller Girls when the girl leagues started getting popular. A&E did a show and committed to like 30 episodes and it got canceled almost immediately. uh, there's nothing wrong with doing features on who they are or who the skaters are, where they come from. I think if you want it to be sort of taken as a sport, play it as a sport. I don't think you need to mix in
Mm,
behind the scenes. It's kind of like unveiling what's Oz behind. You don't want to see sometimes how the food is
mm.
made or what's going on behind the curtain. You just want to see a great product. So I'm not really for uh, doing like going into the dormitories of the skaters and showing and doing drama. I think you do the game.
Yeah. I don't mean like a reality show. I mean more like an actual show, you know, where they're
Yeah.
actors or
No, I don't think people. I don't know. I don't think that would work.
yeah.
I just don't. I think if you're going to bring it back as a sport so people can watch it. I think once you start getting into too much behind the scenes,
Mm.
um, of like how it's being made or what's going on or the training, I don't. Generally, I don't like that.
Were there like real grudges in Roller Jam? 'Cause some of the girls did not seem to like each other. Or was that all part of the show?
No, there's all when you have that many people involved in a show like Roller Jam, not everyone's going to get along. For the most part, everyone got along. There were a couple instances. I remember. I think the only real sort of fight I ever think I witnessed was between Lindsay Francis and Denise Loden, and it was a game where Lindsay accidentally or not accidentally, I'm not sure, chipped one of Denise's teeth. And I was doing the interview after the game with Lindsay. And generally, when you do the interview and the game's over, all the skaters are sort of off the track, they're away. And I'm doing the interview with Lindsay, but Denise stayed and was sort of circling. And I'm talking to Lindsay and I'm asking her questions, and I see Denise sort of lurking. She'd never done that before. So I'm thinking something's up. And all of a sudden, she just comes flying in and jumps on top of Lindsay and starts hitting her for real. It's for real because me and the cameraman and some other crew had to jump in to break them up. If it was set or we knew it was coming, we would have let them go at it because they would have worked it out between themselves. Here's what we're going to do. Because we knew they didn't, that's when you see the crew of the show come in to break them up. That's when you know it's real. We don't want someone really getting hurt. And Denise would probably really hurt Lindsay. And she started hitting her, like really hitting her. So that was, but I don't know off the track. I don't know what their friendship was like. I didn't really mix with because I was going back and forth. Well, the skaters for the most part all lived like in Florida, in Orlando or in Kissimmee. So they a lot like lived together or hung together. Remember, we trained together, and the skaters and the teams would sort of dress rehearse the games together. So it was kind of like one big family. So I can't tell you that I knew of really any real feuds or who really didn't get along. For the most part, I think everyone really got along, just because we were kind of like this big family. We were all in it together. So I can't say if Stacy Blitch, if people really didn't like her or liked her. I don't know why she comes to mind, but like Jamie, everybody liked Laura Weintraub, and everybody loved Jamie, and everybody loved, Debbie, and unfortunately we lost some good skaters along the way. Abraham didn't last through the fourth season. The Martin brothers, I don't believe, lasted through the fourth season. We had some pretty good skaters. There was a girl on, Renee Blevins was on the Texas Rustlers. Really good skater, a little fire plug. So not everybody lasted or made it through to the end. But there were also some good skaters that people like Laura Heiser. We had this jammer, really good skater.
Very fast.
Yeah, she was fast and really good, but we didn't really feature her, didn't really do much with her. Even Amy Zimmerman, Cindy Zimmerman, I'm sorry, was really good, but you don't see her. The Bod Squad was really Jamie and Stacy doing the talking. And Cindy was a great skater and really cool, but she, kind of, I don't say fell through the cracks. It was kind of behind them. It's sort of sad when you see some of the skaters. I think Chris Cheadle, I don't believe, made it all the way through. David Galletti. David Galletti was kind of featured when we began as a Sundog skater. I remember we did a couple pieces on him with alligators or something. Maybe only lasted a season or two. So, but there were great, really good skaters in Roller Jam. If you weren't really a good skater, you wouldn't be out there.
No.
The one thing about this sport is if you're not top notch and they're all you can cause an accident on the track. And if you are not up to it and to the speed and to the athleticism, you don't want to be the one that causes a pileup or falls and has two skaters fall over you and break their arms or break their collarbones because you were not up to par. So really anybody who was in Roller Jam was a good skater, kind of top notch, because you can't afford to have anything but.
One of my favorites was Brian Gallagher.
Brian's great.
I loved him.
Brian's a great skater, really athletic, tons of athleticism. Yeah, when you saw him on jams with a Christian Salvia or an Eric Slopey or Siggy Williams or Mo or Jason or Mark, man, I mean, these guys fly around the track. And I saw sometimes them go right into the upright, the rail, and like snap their heads back. And I saw Christian fly over the rail, no joke, go about 10 feet off the track. I mean, I stand there in the infield and go like, is he going to get up? Because they're going at such fast speeds. And when you fly over the rail, like there's no mats outside there. You're going to hit the cement, or you're going to hit an upright, or you're going to go into the crowd. And some of the skaters would fly off the track onto our ramp. And we had a stage, which is a little safer, but not all the time. So it's, we had so many good skaters. Sean Davidson is a great skater for his size. And, again, Jason McDaniel, Mo Sanders, still he's still skating flat track. And Mo is one of the great skaters. And it's funny, I've put together a list of skaters I would want in a new league. And a lot of them are Roller Jam skaters. And someone said, well, how old are they? Are they too old? And I said, no, it's roller derby is a sport. It doesn't matter your age or your height or your weight. If you can do it and you can keep up, then there's a spot for you. If you grew up watching the LA T-Birds, they had a woman 747 was her number because she was 300 pounds. She was great. Ralphie Valadares was in his 60s with gray hair. He was still the fastest skater. It's one of these sports where it doesn't matter what size you are or what age you are. I guarantee you there's 40 skaters from Roller Jam I would take right now and put right into a game. Without hesitation. I'd put Tim Washington out there. I'd put Mark Webber out there. I'd put Mo Sanders out there. I'd put Brian Gallagher out there. I'd put Denise Loden. I'd put Debbie, Heather. I'd put almost any skater from Roller Jam 21 or 22 years later. I'd still put them out there. And I bet you they would still perform.
Do you have any favorite storylines that you're involved in or from the show?
Oh, wow. Favorites. There's so many. Some are like blurs. I mean, the most fun I had was probably the one, and it was probably one of the worst storylines, was when where Mark and Sean were having the surgery. And again, it was, I mean, when we do the thing, I think Nurse Ophelia drew blood from Sean or Mark after a game, and it was one of these syringes that already had blood in it, or it was like a trick syringe or something. But I remember they said, we're going to do a piece where they're going to go in for surgery. So I think Sean was giving, or Mark was going to give his kidney to Sean. So Sean could still live or skate, or I don't remember. And we went to a hospital in Orlando the night before our tapings. And Mark was in one bed and Sean was in a bed in the camera, and I'm in the middle of them wearing like scrubs. We were in a real hospital. And I think I had a line where I go like, Mark, I hope everything goes well today. And he goes, Wolf, you're spitting in my face. Mm-hmm. And I start laughing because I laugh all the time. No joke, we did like 20 takes of that interview before they go into surgery. Then they said, well, Danny, what we're going to do is when we have our taping tomorrow night, we're going to roll this footage in like it's live. And you're going to leave and run from the hospital to the arena and tell D'Amato what an asshole you are. You left the hospital and leaving your brother to die. And he's going to reveal he's not the brother. So I remember running out of the hospital and sliding on the floor into the wall and running through the parking lot. And then that was all we shot that night. Then we're at our taping and I get back in the scrubs like the next night. We're doing the day, and they're like, Danny, you're going to run in and confront D'Amato, stop the game and say, what kind of brother would do that to another brother? And I said, Mark, when I do that, I'm going to poke you or I'm going to put my finger in your chest and then just beat me up. So you see me run onto the track, they stop the game, and I'm looking for D'Amato and I see him. And I run up to him and I go like, what kind of brother would do that to someone? I shove him. Mm-hmm. And he goes, Wolf, you're asking for it. And then he jumps on top of me and kind of starts hitting me. He wasn't really hitting me, and he tears my scrubs. That was just fun because I got to like play act. I got to like get attacked and confront him. And that was just fun for me. We did one angle once where I said something to D'Amato after it never aired, but there was an interview after the game where I said something to him that pissed him off. And he chased me around the track, and I'm running and he's skating. And then I move off and he falls. We never aired it because I was smiling and laughing the whole time he was chasing me. And they're like, well, Danny, we can't air that. Why would you be running laughing or smiling? And I go, it's a nasty habit I've always had. I'm so happy to be chased or so happy to be doing what I'm doing. I can't stop but grin. So like, well, we're not going to air it on the show because it doesn't make sense for you. You should be scared, not laughing. So that was my one nasty habit, is I would laugh during and with Kenneth Logue several times. There was a time where he came down in a wheelchair and he was supposed to be, Nurse Sophia was supposed to let him go, and he was supposed to fall off as he was going down. And we practiced it and he fell out perfect. He tilted the chair, fell off, and I go running up to him asking how he's doing. And during the taping, here we go, Nurse Ophelia lets him go, and you see him going like this, and it won't turn over. So he just slides into the infield, and I run up to him, and I go, oh, fuck, he's supposed to be on the ground, but he couldn't get the wheelchair to turn now. When we're on live, I'm live to tape. And I remember running up to him going, Kenneth, how you feeling? And he's fit as a fiddle, Daniel, never been better. Yeah. And I start laughing, and I start crying, and I put my head behind his wheelchair because I'm crying of laughter. I have a nasty habit I have. I laugh a lot or start smiling, but it ruins a storyline when you're not supposed to be like laughing. Thus, again, having two cameras so they can edit me out. But I don't know. I'm trying to think of another angle I thought was kind of fun. I don't know. That's a good. I mean, I did sort of like the El Numerico thing at first. Because I thought having a wrestler that was like some lucha guy who you didn't know who he was, the whole Devo thing I thought was kind of funny. Mm-hmm. Whereas like, well, it's so ridiculous when you think about it now. Like he was watching Roller Jam in prison, became a pen pal with Mark Webber, got a day pass to leave prison, right? Mm-hmm. Was brought out by a cop that was Jenny Matthews' dad. That after he unleashes him, he shoves him, which is still to me one of the funniest things ever. Why a cop would shove having him skate in a orange jumpsuit, like a prison jumpsuit, something funny. But then we did the thing where I think he didn't want the Hot Dice were going to go on tour and they couldn't take him because he was a convict, so he wouldn't be able to go. So they wanted him off the team or something. But I remember him in his last game saying, "I'm not going back to prison. I'm not going," and skating off the track, grabbing like one of the usher jackets, and then leaving the arena. And Roy Marcus saying, as if it's live when it wasn't live, but to those watching, if anybody in the Orlando area sees a skater coming down your street, lock your doors and windows. He's an escaped convict. To me, was hysterical. But then I mean, some of like the stuff with canine and disable, I didn't get.
They weren't good
Uh,
skaters.
pardon me.
They weren't good skaters. That's what I didn't like
Yeah,
about
no,
them.
yeah. Sometimes we bring people in for story. Some of the stuff with the prophet I didn't get. It was too much. It got too silly. Though some of the briefer storylines, the stuff with like Laura Weintraub and Mark D'Amato having the affair, or Heather Gunnan's baby being Kenneth Logue's, some of it wasn't bad. I mean, some was okay. It's hard when you think back because it kind of blurs together. Like I can't think of like one storyline. I go, well, that was really great. That really worked. Richard Brown, a couple times, I think we handcuffed him to his briefcase or to the penalty box so he couldn't interfere. I never understood the penalty cages. I don't even know where that came from when we started that. I think I just showed up. Yeah, I think it's when I showed up for season 4 and they're like, guess what, Danny? Now we have cages. And I'm like, for who? And they're like, the skaters. Instead of the penalty box, we're going to throw them in cages. And I'm like, in cages? And I remember them trying to fight through. The cages were weird, but then they would jump on top of the cage with like trash cans and jump off the cages onto the track. I mean, by the end, I mean, any wrestling fan knew we were doing a lot of chair shots. We were doing bench shots. We were doing trash can lids. Even Talisa Miller is skating jams with 2 lids and like cymbals hitting skaters in the head.
I could have done without all that.
Huh?
I could have done without all that. I didn't like the doors and the trash cans, and
I agree with you. It was becoming, we were doing like a lot of suplexes on the track and a lot of like, I think Mark Webber or Sean would jump off the rail with a trash can over. Yeah, it was a little too much of that. Because you watch season 1 or 2, you see none of that. We never used doors in season 1 or 2.
People always complain about season 4, and I like the campy storyline. It's just the lack of actual skating and the extras I didn't care for, but I still watch season 4 and I enjoy it and I laugh at it. It's great.
I like season 4 also. I like all the seasons. I like season 4. I just think it was like we were spiraling off in that weird direction of camp. And like you said, it was now less about who won the game, less about who the winning jammer was who scored the last. It was like, oh, Mo scored 4 points in the right one, art, whatever. How about what are we doing right after the game with this fight? Like it didn't matter if the enforcers won or lost. It didn't like there was no emphasis on winning. Like it did. If you won, who cared? If you lost, who cared? It never mattered. And who scored the most points in the game didn't matter. It should matter. I'm saying is that stuff should have been more important. And who had the winning jam and who scored the most points in the game should have been concentrated on more than who was going to leave in a helicopter and who was getting kidnapped or who was getting thrown in a car or fighting in the kitchen. So yeah, we probably should have tailored some of that back, but it was sort of like it just was spiraling.
How did you find our little Facebook group?
I've been on Facebook a while. I'm not sure how I found it. I mean, I like it. It's great. And I'm glad it's there. And I liked years ago, I think it was Lauren Miller or somebody else was putting the games on YouTube. And it was someone before Lauren. There was one person first. I don't know if you know who that was.
Like a Louis or Chris Louis or something.
Yes. Like Christopher Louis was putting the games on, and then Lauren was putting them on because you could see Lauren's TV, which was great. And then they started coming in. It's funny, late at night sometimes I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch or shuttle through a game. And I will always stop if there's a Kenneth Logue interview. I will watch that. just because it makes me laugh and makes me smile. But I do watch the games like late at night if I can't sleep. I'll bring like my iPad in my bed and I'll just go to like some random game and
Mm.
just like I won't watch the whole thing. I kind of like shuttle through it, and I like to do that. But the Roller Jam, the fan page is great on Facebook. I mean, it seems like there's more and more members. We did a great Zoom last Saturday, and it's cool to have the fans ask questions and get to answer them honestly. And I know the skaters are probably surprised. I think that there's like these. I think Jamie Conomack had no idea. Like she's like, there's a fan page. We're like, yeah, and people are still watching. We're like, yeah. Like you tell her, yes, we're watching the games. I think the
20 years,
skaters appreciate it.
20 years later, like, are you surprised that people are still talking about it?
Yeah, I am. Actually, I am surprised. I mean, I'm glad. I'm glad people like it. I'm glad people, and I still like reminiscing and I like talking about it because it was a great time in my life. And it's nice to know that fans still like the sport and appreciate it. So no, I love it that there's a fan site. I think it's great. I hope it keeps growing. I hope people keep watching the games on YouTube. I wish Fox Sports would have taken the Roller Jam library, whatever it was, 6, 7 months ago, and started airing the games. It would have been great because I think a whole new fan base would have added some momentum to a new sale of a show. But no, I love it, and I think the fan side. I am surprised because it was so many years ago. But then you think there were people who weren't alive then, that maybe are 17 or 18 years old now, going, "Wow, that's a pretty cool show, and I can watch a ton of it." And or maybe in case like yourself, how old were you when Roller Jam was on?
Between 14 and 16.
Yeah,
But
so there were
me and
people
my
your
brother
age.
were obsessed with it.
So you watched it when it came on at the time it came back then.
Mhm. Yeah. It was every Friday. My mom would buy us a bag of Doritos, and me and my brother would sit and watch Roller Jam, and we'd tape it. We'd tape every episode that we ever watched. So I've yet to see the first half of season one. I haven't seen because I didn't know it was on that time.
Yeah, you're not missing much there.
But then my brother, we were, I don't know, we were weird nerd kids, so he would save all the pictures off the Roller Jam website, and like 20 years later, he moved in with me and he brought floppy disks of all the pictures. So I went and got a guy to take them off the floppy disk, and that's why we still have all these old Roller Jam pictures. Was because my brother saved them all.
Oh, that's great. It's great to see those pictures on the site too. I used to tape the games on I had all of them on VHS at one time, and then got them transferred to DVD. So I actually taped Roller Jam when I was on it. I would tape everyone just to have it in like my library.
Mm.
And on my wall in my bedroom right now, I have from the magazine's cutouts in like a collage that I have on my wall right next to my bed. So every night I have the ticket from Las Vegas, from the MGM Grand, and pictures of me from the magazine in like this Roller Jam collage. Um, so I still get to look at that every day. And no, it's cool. It's neat when you hear even that people watched it every week and were into it, because when you're doing it, you kind of don't know. You see a lot of the same fans at our games would show up. Like Rich Besser, I know, would come to like every game, and Bill Nagy. They would. You'd see a lot of the same fans come to all the games, which was great because they supported the show, and it was great to have loud crowds. And but it's even cooler now that to hear like younger people are discovering it is really cool, because I think it was great. It was a great show and had
Mhm.
great action and like stuff you don't see anywhere else. Like there's nothing you can compare Roller Jam to that's on TV now. And it's not Ninja Warrior and it's not Wipeout and it's nothing else is like it. It's so unique, but it's cool that, that the
Mhm.
Roller Jam fan site's going, and I see the pictures when they're posted every day, and sometimes I share them on my page, which I like.
I want to give a shout out to Lauren Miller because I actually made the fan site and just sat there with like 6 people in it for like a year and a half. And then when Sean Atkinson passed away, I saw on YouTube popped up Lauren Miller talking about it, and that's how I found out about it. He was my favorite skater, but then but after watching the video, I went like added Lauren Miller to Facebook so I could add him to the group. And then he started adding skaters and people, and it just ballooned from there. So the group might be sitting with 10 people, and still, if I didn't creepily add Lauren Miller to Facebook. So
Yeah,
shout out to
Lauren.
Lauren Miller.
Yeah, Lauren's been a big advocate of Roller Jam. He's a true quad father, and no, we
Mhm.
love Lauren. Anyone, Lauren, I was watching when Lauren was posting them on YouTube. I was checking them out, and it was great, and it was good memories. So no, Lauren's great, and there's that core group of fans right now that are kind of keeping the flame alive, which is good. And I think the skaters, it's nice that they don't know it, and when they find out, like Jamie Conomack again, had no idea there was like a fan site, and how excited she was to
Mm,
find out like people were still watching. It wasn't forgotten. So
nope.
that's a good feeling. It's great.
Is there anything that you're working on now that you want to talk about?
I've been doing documentaries. So I did a 3-part documentary on cult films. That's called Time Warp, the greatest cult films of all time. And I spent 2 years interviewing the casts and directors and producers and writers of 45 cult movies. So I interviewed the casts of Napoleon Dynamite and Fast Times at Ridgemont High and On and Kingpin and Dawn of the Dead and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because I'm a huge movie nerd.
Mm,
So it's 5.5 hours. It's 3 parts, but it's called Time Warp, and it's out on Amazon Prime. It's on video on demand. It's on Fandango and Vudu and all those. And there's 115 interviews I did with all the stars of these movies, Big Lebowski and Jeff Bridges and John Turturro. I got to interview everybody. Traveled all over the country, which is my love. And then did a documentary right after that that's on Hulu now and on Amazon Prime. It's doing really well on Hulu, called Skin, a
mm.
history of nudity in the movies.
I
And
bought it
it's
on
doing,
YouTube.
yeah, it's that was another. I did about 55 interviews. It took about little over a year, and it took many months to cut it, the 6-hour cut down to 2 hours and 10 minutes, which is not easy because you lose a lot of good stuff. And I'm hoping to do Skin 2 in the near future, a history of sex in the cinema, as a companion documentary. And there's a few other documentaries right now I'm out pitching. One is a 12-part series called The Greatest Sports Movies of All Time. And yes, Kansas City Bomber and Rollerball are on the list. And there's a few others. I love directing documentaries because I love doing interviews, especially with, I mean, sitting down with like Jeff Bridges and talking Big Lebowski. I kind of fan out. Or
Mhm.
going to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house and interviewing Ed Neal in front of it in Texas, or Malcolm McDowell about Clockwork Orange. Like, I love interviewing people from these movies. So I want to keep doing sort of movie related historical documentaries. So I'll keep doing that, but I wouldn't mind getting interrupted to do roller derby again.
What about a roller jam documentary?
No, I don't know that. I don't know if there's enough
Yeah.
demand. There's been a few roller derby documentaries over the years, and I don't know if they've done. It's kind of niche,
Mhm.
It's a niche audience, although a good size audience. I don't know if the roller derby docs have ever done that well, but a friend of mine just finished a documentary on the history of the Olympic Auditorium that's coming out, and that was like our venue in LA where the T-Birds skated, and it's going to be this great doc coming out. I think it was supposed to come out last year, but because of COVID, it's coming out this year. But it's on the history of the Olympic Auditorium. So all the wrestling and the roller derby is what it's about, like the early years of Roddy Piper and all the wrestlers that started in LA, and then the LA T-Birds. You'll see amazing, great interviews with roller derby skaters and the T-Birds. So that's coming out. But yeah, I don't know if a roller jam doc, I don't know if there's enough. We just got to get a new show on the air, Eric. That's it.
Mhm.
We got to get a new show on the air. That's the
When
goal.
all this COVID's done, it'd be nice to have like an actual in-person roller jam reunion.
Yeah, I mean, a fan fest would be great. I mean, people are kind of scattered all over.
Mm,
There's some of us here in California. There's some in Texas. Probably majority are in, Florida, still in the
mm,
East Coast, Southeast, North Carolina, South Carolina. So if you did it, it would probably have to be in that sort of area
mm,
in Florida, I would guess somewhere. But I would go to it.
mm. I was hoping to do this interview in California. I haven't been for probably 8 years or so. I haven't been in California, but next time I'm in California, I owe you dinner. How about that?
Yeah.
I,
Well, I'll give you a tour. I used to, when I was going to USC, I used to give students from out of state tour my tour. So I go like to the Charles Manson house or the Menendez murder house. It was always kind of this macabre tour I give people. Or the Brady Bunch house is like 2 minutes from me. I can walk there where they shot the Brady Bunch. So I love giving tours. So I'll give you one of my Hollywood tours.
That'll be awesome. My girlfriend's obsessed with Disney, so I've already been to Disneyland. She's gonna make me take her to Disneyland someday. So California is definitely gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, they're using Disneyland as a vaccination center right now. Disneyland's been closed for a while. I know the one in Florida opened in July, but the one here, they tried to open it up and they couldn't get it open because we have a bad governor.
Mm.
But I go to Disneyland a few times every year, and I've gone to Club 33 a bunch of times because a friend gets me in. It's kind of cool. So no, I love Disneyland. Love Disneyland. Never been, by the way, I never went to Disney World. All the time I spent in Kissimmee in Orlando, I never went to Disney World.
My girlfriend made me spend, I think, 4 or 5 days just there. Just the main one. We went to Epcot, but just the main one. We spent 4 days there. So I actually appreciate it now. At the time, I was like, oh my God, but it's kind of fun.
No, it's great. I love anything Disney. I love.
I want to thank you for talking to me. You definitely
Oh,
didn't have to, but
anytime, Eric.
I'm going to turn off recording. This, or how do you do? I've been like sick all day, nervous having to do this, and it went a lot better than I thought it was going to.
No, it was great. You asked all the right questions, and everything's great. I always like talking roller jam to anybody who has questions. I don't mind answering anything. So
Mm.
you did great.
Thank you very much for talking to me, and I'll let
Of
you
course.
know when I'm going to be in California.
Definitely do that. We'll get together, and if I get something breaking on the front here with TV, I'll let you know for sure. And
Yeah,
then the
let me
site,
know.
100%.
Thank you.
Have a good one now. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
How do I do this?